let's look at the type of fonts that you can choose from. So I'm going to take my type tool here. I'm going to type out again, I love typography. Take my selection tool, make sure that my text is selected, and here we have a font family of Myriad Pro. I'm going to option drag this down just so we can have two, and I'm going to show you a difference. So Myriad Pro is a sans serif font. Sans means without, and serif means feet. Okay? And what they mean by that is underneath things like the P and the H, it's just a flat line. It's a straight line, right? Let's look at a serif font. That'll be a font with feet. So I'm going to switch from this to Times New Roman, which is one of the more popular serif fonts. So now if we look at the two, the top is sans serif, right? A little more clean. The bottom is serif. Now typically in the past, serif fonts were used for body type. That would be like paragraphs, right? Big blocks of text. The idea being that the little serifs help lead the eye through. Then to create contrast, sans serif fonts were used for heading type, right? Like chapter headings, section headings. It did two things. It created, a little cleaner, but it created contrast. Now that was mostly to do with printed type, like in books and newspapers and magazines. Times New Roman was made for the New York Times newspaper. With the internet, this rule is kind of an old school rule. With type on the screen, our eyes perceive it differently, and you can use sans serif font as your body type. And it's pretty common nowadays. If you look at websites, you see both. It's not a hard, fast rule anymore that sans serif is heading and serif is body. But I did want to give you kind of the historical perspective there. Now, when you're choosing fonts, and typically you don't want to choose more than two on a design, you're going to choose typically a sans serif and a serif to create contrast, right? Now there's another style. I'm going to option drag this down. There's another style. I'm going to come in here and let's see if we can find one easily. Let's look up here. Well, technically there's four, so I'll go over the four. I mean, those two, sans serif and serif, are the biggies. Then there are script fonts, so let me find one of those, something like this. Script font is something that looks more like writing, okay? So that would be a script. Then you could say a fourth type of font, but not really, but a fourth style would be something like this, Colors of Autumn, which I don't think you have. I think it's something I downloaded. This would be a decorative font, okay? So these two, sans serif and serif, are the most used. They're really clean, contrast each other. You can use script fonts, and you may be tempted to use it for large bodies of text. You don't want to. Only time would be in short paragraphs on wedding invitations, graduation invitations, stuff like that. You would most likely use this as a contrast to something like this on a specific style. Same thing with this. These types of fonts are used very minimally, and they're used typically as titles, headings, something to catch your eye. And then the important stuff where people actually need to read details are going to be one of these two. So when you're thinking about design with typography, one of the main things to understand is typically you're going to combine a sans serif and a serif font, but you may also combine them with one of these two.